Hello everyone, I am Abid Hassan, Senior Assistant Editor with ETHR World, and please join me in welcoming Aditya Sareen, Head Capability and Leadership Development, Campus and Cadre Management, Tata Power. Welcome to this webinar, Mr. Sareen.
It's a pleasure, Abid, and thank you for having me on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. For my viewers, I welcome all of you in this insightful webinar on creating breakthroughs, technology powering the hybrid workforce, presented by ETHR World in association with Skillsoft. Before I give this platform to Mr. Sareen, I would like to say a few lines about him. Mr. Sareen is a dynamic HR professional with over 24 years of experience, having worked across sectors such as media, advertising, consulting, telecom, banking, retail, airports, infrastructure, hospitality, and power, and many more. He has innate capabilities of people development and customer service excellence and firmly believes in creating delight for all his internal and external stakeholders. He has an inborn passion for public speaking. He is enthusiastic and energetic, and his colleagues call him a live wire. He has conceptualized, launched, and successfully implemented multiple projects in his illustrious career. And there are many more to come. I wish all the good luck to Mr. Sareen. And I really believe what Mr. Sareen's life mantra is. He always says that even the stop clock show the correct time twice in 24 hours. On that note, over to you, Mr. Sareen.
Thank you, Abid. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to be here on this webinar with you. Abid has put a lot of pressure on me, by giving a lot of credentials of me, which I don't know whether I'm worthy or not, whether it's God's grace or my hard work. But currently, I'm heading learning, that is capability, leadership development, campus and cadre management at Tata Power. And I've been in this role in Tata Power at Mumbai for the last 7 years almost. And it's a wonderful place to be, Tata Power. We have a rich legacy of 107 years. And it's indeed an honor for me to represent my thoughts to all of you. As I mentioned, Abid has mentioned about a lot of details about me, and that adds a lot of pressure. And therefore, I'd request you to be good audiences and just kind of go with what I say. I'm sure there are some very, very great professionals here. And I think the focus for me is to learn from you. So I think while for a couple of minutes, it will be a one-way communication where I will share my thoughts. But I think the fun is going to be in the question and answers where I get your thoughts. I will try to respond. And of course, we will learn together. So with this, I will be now sharing my screen. Now, the topic given to me today by ET World is perhaps will sound to you like a CIO's topic, but it's actually not. When I was researching on this topic, talking about creating breakthroughs, technology powering the hybrid workforce, I actually thought that, how do I make this interesting for all of you, or all of us rather, where we get perspectives from an HR person like me, who's a people and organization development person, and perhaps link it to what the hybrid workforce models are. How do we enable hybrid workforce? And finally, we also talk about the IT piece of the hybrid workforce. So I want to start by talking about what is the hybrid workforce. And if you see, this is credited to Forbes.com. The pandemic has somehow demystified the process of working from home. And as a result, today many organizations are looking to a new hybrid model that combines remote working and office collaboration. Now, why would they look at something that is hybrid? Well, I have some interesting, data points for you. So what will the hybrid workforce look like? And this is again, Forbes.com. Many companies will likely still retain physical offices. It's clear that they will not be the same though, which means that it's not going to be purely physical. And that's what gets us to our thought of a hybrid workplace. Now, the hybrid workforce model, and I would like you to focus on three very important pieces that I've highlighted: remote solo, remote micro, and traditional concentrated facilities, which means the hybrid workforce model will ensure that the workforce has the ability to flow through any of these, from a remote solo, which I am right now, I'm working from home today, to a remote micro where there are a small number of people working together on remote micro, or traditional brick and mortar concentrated facilities, which is office, factory, retail, etc. Now, the hybrid workforce model is going to be the one of flexibility, adaptability, and shared ownership. And this is not me who's talking. This is Gartner's research, which is beyond remote work, the hybrid workforce model. Now, if we see if the hybrid workforce model is about remote solo, remote micro, and traditional, that means our model has to have a free flow between all these three. And that exactly, ladies and gentlemen, is the point that we're going to discuss today. How do we enable a hybrid workforce model? Now, if you see, the hybrid workforce model is about adaptability and interchangeability, which means work on site, work interchangeably between office and home, and then work purely remote. It's none of the two extremes. It is actually the center, work interchangeably. And each one of them have peculiarities. Now, the hybrid model will be, absolutely functional when we have the ability to flow through, which means we have the ability for employees and managers to switch locations and schedules dynamically, which means neither you're purely on site, neither you're purely remote, you're somewhere interchangeable. That means basis the requirement, you move through this in order to drive productivity and engagement. And there is a lot of data that I'm going to present to you that either of these will not help. It is going to be the center that's going to be helpful. Shared ownership. Well, I think we have to be more trusting and trustworthy. We have to be more productive while we need to be flexible and comfortable being mobile. So today I don't, get up, drive my car, reach my office, do my work, come back. I work interchangeably. When I say I am talking about all of us, most of us. And therefore we need to have the ability to flow through and the ability to have shared ownership. And that means that a lot of work has to be done by the IT. We'll talk more about it as I take you forward. Why a hybrid workplace? Okay, why not after COVID? I'm sure, God is kind. I'm sure we are taking command of the COVID situation. We're doing very well as a country, as various countries in the world. And I think sooner or later, we will take control of COVID. And I think COVID would be a thing of the past. But still, is it only COVID related that we are working remotely? Is it that we should go to a hybrid workplace model even after COVID, which we say is the new normal or will be the new normal after things settle down? We already see vaccines. We see a lot of success rates in vaccines. I want to bring forth to you a point that, some companies, and look at this, a company called Automatic, which is an American global distributed company in 2005, about 1,277 of their employees were entirely remote working even when the coronavirus hit us, which means there were some companies that were working remotely then. The workforce were also offered perks that included reimbursement of setting up officers or home offices, and it didn't expect still to have their employees work in isolation. And therefore, there were a monthly stipend to use co-working spaces by getting daily passes or ongoing memberships for either shared workspaces or coffee shops. And therefore, if you see, the need for a hybrid workplace has been there for many years. COVID has just intensified that. While we were absolutely remote for a couple of months, we are going to be hybrid. And look at what Deepesh Agarwal, CEO of Work in Sync, wants to say. He says that an Indian commutes around 55 minutes one way. Rather, I do about 1 hour 45 minutes one way, by the way. Now, depending on the function, working from the office 2 to 3 days per week ensures that we huddle with teammates in person, and at the same time, the balance 2 days or 3 days we focus by devoting time at home, which means the workplace of the future should be or would be a hybrid workplace, because it is going to be a marrying of the the isolation part, which means dedicated focused work without disturbance of traffic, without having to run early, come in late, and which means being productive early on in the day, being productive till late in the night, as also being there in office for 2-3 days, 1 day, 2 days, depending on where you work for, and ensuring the warmth of meeting people. I was reading a lot of literature last couple of days when I was preparing for this webinar, and I realized that if I were to be put into a room and left on my own for a remote work, perhaps we are not ready for it. We need the personal touch. When I say personal, I'm not talking about a physical touch, but a personal touch of being there with colleagues, of seeing and feeling or experiencing the warmth. Now, what are the benefits of a hybrid workforce? Well, there is increased productivity and improved employee satisfaction. In fact, there is data upon that. I won't go about the data. There is going to be lower business costs and reduced carbon footprint. Well, absolutely. I was looking at my petrol bills for the last almost 9 months, and I saw a drastic reduction. It's not about my cost. It's about the cost of running an enterprise. It's about a cost of running an organization. It's about the carbon footprint. We do not need to go and burn petrol, diesel, etc. When we're traveling. A lot of lovely blue skies from where I stay in Navi Mumbai, I could see, and I think that those were the best days that one could see. You could see as far as you can from your rooftop, etc., and you could see the lovely blue skies. So we did reduce carbon footprint. Do we retain it? Yes, and I think some data says that it also reduced layoffs, because when you reduce business costs, you can attribute that to the workforce, wage bill, and you don't need to lay off. Finally, a shift to remote operation. Now, if you see, this is all that a business requires. If you have increased productivity, you have increased employee satisfaction. I'm saying this with the context of hybrid. I'm not saying that this is purely work from home or remote working. When you have lowered business costs, when you have reduced carbon footprint, and when you have a shift to remote operations without affecting the ultimate business objectives, then it creates a clear case of a benefit for a hybrid workforce. And this is again data from Forbes.com. I'd like to show you this model, which is shared by Gartner, about the 3 E's of a hybrid workforce. The economics, which means you need to build the business case for a hybrid workforce, which means you need to understand what is the case and the strategy for creating, extending, or expanding a hybrid workforce. The words are creating, extending, and expanding. Now, you may say COVID did not give us a chance. We had to create it. But ladies and gentlemen, that was not hybrid. That was purely remote working. Today, as we get into the we release ourselves from the grip of corona virus or COVID-19, as they would call it, we have to have a business case for either extending or expanding our hybrid workforce. Otherwise, our tendencies will be to go back to what we used to do. We will start commuting. We will start burning, fuel. We will start unsafe practices of driving fast. And I've seen a lot of people in Delhi, Mumbai, and Dubai, where I used to work, where people used to run across various locations. And I think safety gets compromised when you're running and rushing. We know the kind of accidents that we see on the road. So that's the economic part of it. The employee experience part is about adapting the employee life cycle for the hybrid workforce. This is a very big piece, ladies and gentlemen. We would have a business case, but how do we manage the employee experience? Until recently, we were absolutely, a physical brick and mortar setup, leaving aside some examples that we had from Europe and the Americas, where you have people who were remotely working or working from home. In my 24 years, have not seen any of the organizations that I have worked for, and they were very illustrious organizations, very successful, where we had remote working until now. And therefore, that means that, we are perhaps not attuned to the employee life cycle for the hybrid workforce. So we have to look at employee experience. And as HR professionals, L&D professionals, OD professionals, talent management professionals, and perhaps even CIOs, CTOs, we must ensure that the experience is as warm, as caring as it was in the personal environment. In fact, I come from Tata Power. It's a very, very caring organization. We care for our people, we care for our stakeholders, we care for our environment. And I think it's important that the employee should not feel that I'm missing something if I'm working in a hybrid mode. While I may be saving cost, I may be saving travel time, I may be more productive, but am I missing something? And if you're missing something, then I think it's to relook at, and I think the case has to be more stronger. And finally, organization enablement, and that is about ensuring that the workforce is fully supported, and that exactly is the title of today's session. That how can technology be an enabler for the hybrid workforce, and what do we have to look at here? We have to ensure that there is continuous improvement of our workforce models, and that we ensure that our workforce is enabled. I remember our organization was the early adapters of e-learning way back, a couple of years back, very successful. We were early adapters of productivity collaboration tools, but we have to ensure that the infrastructure, and hence the support system of the processes are very important. And how do we enable? Because these 3 E's, economics, experience and enablement are going to be important as we go forward. Now, many of the HR heads, talent heads, performance heads, L&D heads are grappling with the fact that do we go back to our same model, or are we forced to be in the current workforce model hybrid till we hear the word that you are mask free now, there is no more coronavirus? I think if we are waiting for that, I think we are not being future forward. We have to look at it from the lens of economics, experience, and enablement. And be it corona or no corona, we must look at the best possible work force model that we must have for our organizations. And I think corona is just the catalyst. This was going to come. We would see a lot of issues in traffic. We would see a lot of real estate price hikes in the main cities, towns. We were supposed to move. Luckily, it's only being accelerated by the coronavirus. Therefore, I sometimes, say that, I think the acceleration part of change has actually been done by this virus. Though I'm not a propagand of either of those, but I think we have to relook at this aspect. Let's look at, and I'm going to just go back to this slide. I'm going to walk you through, and this is Gartner's report on the framework for economics, experience, and enablement. And just be with me. This slide is a very powerful slide. So economics, what do we look at? We look at building the business case. We look at clarifying the strategy. We look at scenario planning. This is the three important pieces of the economics of a hybrid workforce. Build a business case that demonstrates tangible benefits and mitigates potential concerns for expanding a hybrid workforce. They're not saying for commencing a hybrid workforce, they're saying expanding a hybrid workforce, because the given is that people will not go back to where they were. If you pull an elastic and you release, it will still not come to its original shape until there is a lot of time. And I think that's the time for us to retain the change. Clarify strategy, define the components and expected outcomes of the organization's hybrid workforce strategy, because it's important that if you have a case, you have a very, very clear strategy. Identify the hybrid workforce models, including remote viable positions, and clearly define the degrees of flexibility for different sets of roles. Now, it's very important to understand that when we are working remotely, we're not going to compromise on governance. We're not going to compromise on schedule of authorities. We're not going to compromise on financial, aspects. We're a very compliant country, and we want to be the same. So therefore, how do we give flexibility? Do we give flexibility to everyone? Do we give flexibility based on roles? Do we give flexibility based on the value addition? Is a question that we are all going to be grappling with, and we need to have answers for that. Employee experience on the right-hand side of your screen. Recruiting. How do you recruit now and source and adjust your EVP, employee value proposition, and branding strategies in a remote hybrid workforce model? What do you do if an incumbent asks you that, do you provide hybrid workforce, and you say no? Will you lose talent? I am currently recruiting in large numbers for our cadre intake. In Tadapar, we grow our own timber, therefore we recruit only from the campuses primarily. And one of the key questions that is today not a constraint for the candidates is they know it is going to be hybrid. They know it's going to be remote and on premise, and therefore the apprehensions to take up a role without asking for location is coming. I'm seeing that positive trend. However, it's difficult because now most companies that I know are recruiting digitally. There are challenges. How do you ensure a very seamless experience for your respective future intake of talent? Virtual onboarding. We all remember large companies, large set of people coming in, physical onboarding, the bonhomie bonding of outdoor team building games, visits to archives, visits to plants, visits to respective office locations, personal interaction with leadership, with employees. How do you ensure that happens digitally? And are you going to take away the flavor from the cuisine, or are you going to just retain the flavor, perhaps add some more dressings on the cuisine and make it even more tastier? It's an important aspect. We will definitely reduce costs, because when we do virtual onboarding, we will reduce costs. But then cost versus investment is a very important aspect. We have to look at that, and that's part of employee experience. Well-being. We have to understand and analyze current health and well-being strategies. I think it's important because now your people may not be on-prem many times. How do you ensure that they're healthy? I personally, felt that when you're inactive, working from a study table or a so-called, couch, or let's say, you're lazing around home, how do you maintain your own well-being? By the way, let me also tell you that working hours have stretched, right? I know many of you will perhaps share this question. When working hours stretched, you don't have a clear demarcation between personal time, official time. By the way, for me, I think everything is lifetime, and therefore there's nothing called personal or official. But how do you make a quick balance between that is important. Goal setting and performance. Well, you need to educate managers how to, review, revise goals as on the go, because now perhaps that is going to be a critical thing. You may have people who are working under your nose or with you, shoulder to shoulder, while some will be working remotely. How do you view them? Do you just, penalize them because they're not in front of you, which is out of sight, out of mind? Or are we now well versed to look at it from a very large pragmatic view? Total rewards. Well, do we look at how rewards and recognition will need to be adjusted in the hybrid workforce to ensure parity? And this person comes all the way. I see him or her here for 6 days, whereas this person is not there at all, or this person has a reason not to be here, or because I see the physical effort that this person is making, whereas I don't quantify or see the virtual effort, is something we have to answer. And I may not have all the answers, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm putting some important points which we all must consider. Communication and collaboration. We have to include and implement technology solutions that improve communication. In Tata Power, we did our annual R&R, which was absolutely virtual. And, our colleagues say, and in fact, I was the host of that function, that it was as good as a Bollywood or a good, upmarket award function. Now, which means that you need technology. In my 24 years, and I've been hosting events, I've been an extempore speaker, debater, etc. As a hobby, I've been hosting events from the time I was in early school. And I have never ever realized that it was not that you won't walk up on a stage and you do an event in a virtual stage where I'm on a chroma screen with a green background behind me and there is something else being edited and put behind me. So imagine, for the first time in 24 years, I think I would have anchored up in, if not more, at least 200 odd events in my career. And I was looking back and I was seeing what is there, and there was nothing. And I was talking to somebody who was supposed to be fit in there in a chroma screen. I don't know how many of us are aware of the chroma screen aspect of a green background screen. Some of us who are who have communication, etc. experience will know that it's not easy. How do you, look at your eyes? How do you focus to the person who's joining you from somewhere and will be digitally fit into that screen? Difficult. For one, I was a little conscious about it. But yes, we pulled out a very good show. How do you ensure that so we have musical nights in Tarabar, we have our own band. How do we ensure that, they're playing at some location, it's being edited at some location, and it's being relayed to some other location? It's important to have communication strategy. In fact, our managing director and CEO was there on premise early on in Corona crisis to address our colleagues from plants. We're a power company. We have to run 24/7. How do you reach on the spot and relay the message of solidarity and support? Is very important strategy. Talent development. I had learning leadership at Tata Power, capability and leadership development. And we have our leadership development framework. We have a lot of rigorous learning and development strategies. They all moved online. For the first couple of weeks, I was grappling with the fact, and this is a part of having a very, very, progressive partnership with Skillsoft on what we call Gyan Kosh, which is our Tata Power's e-learning platform, which in the first year has broken records, and it was Skillsoft's program of the year with as high as 98% of adoption rate, and how do I ensure that the rate does not drop? Incidentally, the rate went high. Our people learned more than what they would learn on premise. Our people adapted to learning. Our learning and development interventions were focused to address first a remote work and now a hybrid workforce. In a classroom today, as I speak to you, in one program, there are about 15 people in the class with absolute social distancing and about another 20 odd joining from remote sites. Our infrastructure had to be upgraded, and we did that. As Tata Power, we believe that the employee and the customer is at the center of what we do. Enablement. Measurement analytics is very important to understand and measure and monitor the success of the hybrid workforce. Manager and leader capability. We're all managers who've been born and brought up in the era of seeing people work, and barring some of us who worked abroad, others still will not believe, are you working or not? We were still, all of us still the biometric or the attendance kind of people. But now it's all about developing capability that work can happen, offline, work can happen online, work can happen from various, locations. Work can happen without supervision of a minute to minute. But the reviews are important. You have to understand how do you develop your capabilities as a manager, as a leader, to manage your team's performance, communicate with them, manage changes, manage aspirations, manage anxieties. I remember our HR colleagues, all of us were, proactively called up each and every employee, perhaps in the first couple of months on a week-to-week basis. So they just to say, how are you doing? I just want to call you and say, how are you doing? How's your family doing? I hope everything's good. I'm just a phone call away. Just pick up the phone and let me know if I can do something for you. It matters. When everybody is anxious, somebody has to ensure that his anxiety is lower than the others and has to, pacify the anxiety. Culture. How do you move from a culture of a typical brick and mortar to support your workforce? How do you open up networks? How do you allow access to SAP and other ERPs from remote sites? And that, again, I'm going to pick up in a couple of minutes now, saying that, how do we manage the cybersecurity part? Org design. Workflows have changed, roles have changed. Suddenly your sales teams are working from home. How does it happen? A lot of redesign has to happen. A lot of support has to happen from the HR standpoint. Tools and technology. Well, today I'm speaking to you from my house. It's a work from home day for me today, and I'm on Zoom. What if I was not able to use this platform? What if my IT had put firewalls? What if there was technology challenges? There have been in the past, but it's important. Give them the tools. Can your daily sales reports move to your application on the mobile app? Can your other aspects move? Do you still have to give physical vouchers, etc.? I'm leaving these questions for a larger set of, I'm not saying that we do it, but these are questions that you will have to grapple with. Workspace and facilities, very important. When people were not there, you had to maintain the facilities. When people are coming back, you need to ensure they maintain social distancing. When people are going to be coming back to work after Corona is over, you'll have to perhaps give them the feel that, no, you can be in a hybrid workplace. It's not important to be all on-prem. And this is the opportunity. We can look at improved performance and engagement. We can increase the effort and productivity. We can expand and get more diverse talent and talent pool from lateral and the campuses. We must ensure greater well-being. There will be reduced commuting costs and carbon footprint. There will be reduced facility and operating costs. But the center of all this is that the employee's experience and the customer's experience must not be hampered. I'll go ahead and I'll talk about what makes a hybrid workforce a success. And by the way, all I'm doing, ladies and gentlemen, is collating information from all authentic sources and bringing up to you, and I will then share my views as well. So hybrid working is not a transition back to the pre-COVID norms. I'm sure we are all aware. We are not talking post-COVID or pre-COVID. We are saying we will be hybrid as we go forward. And all of us who are on this webinar and others, I think we have around some 66 odd or perhaps 139. Okay, that's a very good number, 139. And I think this will cascade down that we have to make a case in our organizations. Some organizations are very progressive, some may not be. How do we make a case? It's not going back to pre-COVID saying, remove the mask, remove the sanitizer, come back to office. Do we make that case? How do we manage it? Effective long-term hybrid working will have to require purpose and purpose-built ultra-portable devices. I remember a couple of years back, we were talking about, bring your own device to work. Do we do that soon? Do we still have those firewalls? Do we still say sign-on, single sign-on, and so on and so forth? Do we still have a more regressive or a more progressive IT policy? When I say we, I'm talking about the general organizations that we all know about. We'll have to discuss that. The new normal will be a golden era of hybrid working, which means, okay, any 3 days in the week, work from home, take your call. Then do I be responsible and accountable? Is it that I am the only one at home today? The entire team or the entire CFT is working on-prem. If they are working on-prem, what do we do? How do I join in? Am I going to lose out? Are they going to say, okay, this guy is any which way is joining from remote side? We'll come back to you. I think we'll discuss it internally. How do we manage that? That's important. And therefore, they need tools. Employee needs tools, important imperatives, and that's what's going to make it success. Office environments will play a key role in creating connections with a dispersed workforce. What happens if a birthday party is happening now virtually? 2 people in office, the other 10, 15, 20, 30 virtual. How do we do that? How will the warmth be maintained? Planning is worth the extra effort. Let's not be random. We need to be planning, and we need to be well planned for the future. Adopt communication. Personal communication is also important. Pick up the phone and say, hi, how are you doing? I haven't seen you for a bit. How are you doing? I just want to say, I hope all's good. Let's catch up for a virtual coffee. This word virtual coffee has just come up, let's do a virtual coffee. I sip coffee here, you sip coffee there. And finally, it's most effective when the corporate policy is updated to match the reality. You cannot use brick and mortar policies for a purely remote or purely, work from home or a mix of hybrid. You'll have to have policies that match the reality. It's like saying that, I am going to be in the era of 5G. I'll still have the fixed landline kind of policies. You can't have that. Landlines were never supposed to give data. Landlines were never supposed to have applications. So that's just a very, very, a very broad-based statement. But you have to be progressive, and your policies have to change as the time changes. Now, 4 ways that org design can enable the workplace, and you will see that I haven't even gotten to technology right now, except for 2 or 3 points on the devices, because I think there was more than this for me to address today. I said if I focus on technology, then I am doing the CIO's job. But as an HR, L&D, OD leader, I have to talk about other aspects, and then perhaps I'll narrow down to IT. Now, look at this. Gartner research reveals that 48% of workers will work remotely at least part of the time after the pandemic, compared to 30%. So that means there are going to be a hybrid workforce, ops across countries. Now, what do? You create centralized support functions virtually to increase accessibility, and I'm going to talk about it. Do you still have to carry your machine and get it repaired, or can somebody, do it online? Is something that's very, very rudimentary, but it's important. Increase work location flexibility. So I don't need to go to my original office. I can work from any office that is closest to me. That's also possible. And way back in one of my organizations, which was a banking company, we could just work into any branch, log in, work, and then, move on. And that's the time when, data cards and, the Wi-Fi's were perhaps not the talk of the town. So how do you make it possible for working from anywhere? Anywhere working, anytime working, is it a reality? If that's a reality, how will you make that a reality? So do I need to travel all the way from Navi Mumbai to Nariman Point and work? Or can I stop by at my office in Chembur, or can I stop by my office in Navi Mumbai and just work from there? Important point to consider. Increase autonomy and formalizing where workflows can flex. Now, do I have to, in this situation, also wait for multiple approvals? Or do I, just take a virtual approval and that works? Which means that somewhere somebody will have to mend the process by saying, hey, there is autonomy, there is a flexibility that I can build. Also, most important, that's my domain. I think Skillsoft is also here. It's about building skills through virtual network instead of in-person events. A lot of people have said, and I'm quoting some very, very high order academicians saying, you know what, in the heart of hearts, I think the in-person, in-class was better. If that's the messaging, then how do we ensure that we have a mix of in-person and virtual? Now, also, we have to ensure that, the ecosystem becomes supportive. And that's very important here. Do we still say, you know what, and I'm going to, tone it in a way that, people say, Abhi to, there is still Corona, let's continue with virtual, but let's go back. Let's reconsider, when the things settle down. Why will you not rebuild or remodel yourself and make it a situation where you will use a mix of hybrid learning? And I'm going to talk more about it. This again is from research by Rebecca and Andy Carr. Hybrid workplace has challenges, colleagues. I think we are all on both sides. We are employees as well. We are also HR, L&D, OD, talent, performance consultants, and IT here in this webinar. So hybrid workplace challenges are communication. We all know about it. No communication means lesser engagement. We are all aware of this. Employee well-being and engagement. We're talking about employee experience. Each of these is a challenge. And I'm saying challenges, which means people have to work and manage them well. Role of HR function as a whole. Well, importantly, compensation benefits. We spoke about it. Real estate. How will we work in the hybrid model? And most importantly, the topic of the day, and that is IT infrastructure and cybersecurity. This is again something that is from insiderhr.com. Now, 5 things to consider in a post-COVID world. And these are important for us to propose to business, because, by the way, as a HR person and having a qualification in marketing, HR, and finance, and perhaps having a slight overedge to understand business, it's important for us in HR to now take a driving seat or pick up the driving seat and then say, how are we going to steer this in the post-COVID times, and perhaps take business on our side. Business is looking, or was looking, and is looking for direction. BCPs are being made by HR team, risk management team, and safety teams. HR has come in the forefront. No better than now. If we use it now and say, okay, we are giving into management and saying, let's go back to the earlier pre-COVID phase, I think we've lost an opportunity, which is an unfortunate opportunity, by the way. But every unfortunate opportunity also has an opportunity. And Abhi was saying that my life mantra is, even the stop clock shows the right time twice in a day. If the clock has stopped at 10, it will show 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. Definitely that will be the right time. So can this very, very bad crisis of COVID help us in some way as a function by capitalizing on the value that we add? Hybrid workforce transformation goals, learning strategies. Well, I'm a learning person. I cannot do a webinar or a seminar or a conference without talking about learning. And that's why I would like to talk about the 5 top takeaways. One is map your skills requirement for a hybrid work future. Look at role-based journeys, role-based roadmaps for future that's hybrid. Enable, identify, and track both formal and informal learning. Democratize learning. And I'm going to talk about which survey is this. Identify the competence, extended potential, and align with the business unit. Look at innovation in competence development. You have to develop competence as fast as possible. Overcome fatigue and still build resilience. Very important. Look at the linkage. Overcome fatigue and still build resilience. Accelerate innovation, customer centricity, and organization-wide growth mindset. Some of us are lucky. We're holding our jobs. Some of us are lucky in Tata Power. We are even doing well. We are a power company. But some of us are not doing well. And therefore, for them, how do you overcome fatigue and build resilience? Because tomorrow is going to be better than today. Very important. Rethink your learning tools and audit the spend. Review the opportunity to upgrade learning platforms for better user experience and engagement. And my friends from Skillsoft, if they're here, perhaps I'll talk to them in this chat, that I think learning budgets have not compressed or contracted. They've expanded, but they've expanded towards the digital platforms. Today, I would like to spend time on a podcast or an e-learning program because I have that 4 hours or 3 hours I have saved from my commute. I am not tired faster because I'm traveling in train or car or the app take taxis, or I'm not traveling across the country through morning, evening flights. I have time. If I have time and if I get a platform, I will learn. Incidentally, our learning strategies have just multiplied in this time. Align goals and rewards, involve leadership. This is from the Skillsoft and People Matters India Learning Trends 2020 research report. Align goals and rewards, involve leadership, leverage internally to enhance collaboration, increase retention, and improve performance. Key market trends in e-learning in the new normal. Well, there are opportunities and challenges. And this is about hyper-personalized and immersive content. Micro-learning. You don't give me content, I'll get content on my own. Today, most companies are in the B2C mode. I will get my own content. If you give it to me, happy about it. Increase focus on value realization. Role-based curation and subject matter journeys. It's a good time to sweat it out now and be ready for the future. Consumerization creates higher expectation from L&D. Very important that, now people are expecting much more from L&D. And if there are colleagues who are CLOs and L&D heads, I'll perhaps talk to them in the chat. I think we'll keep some time for that. Curiosity-based informal learning, learn, access, practice, and apply. And this is some data that I think Skillsoft has given in the report. And this is for, again, the People Matter Skillsoft, that, there's a 552% growth in the collaboration learning tools that have been picked up. 652% growth in agile, FSD, DevOps kind of learning tracks. 367% overall global D&I ethics growth, and effective communication. Now look at this. Effective communication has grown in spite of being in a virtual workplace, which means people realize that it's important to be effective as a communicator even in this situation. And that's a very important aspect. IT's role, very important. IT's role, a recent survey found that 63% of employees are more productive while working from home. According to Korn Ferry, 7,000 American professionals said that by early May, 73% American professionals were feeling burnt out. But what is IT's role? IT imperatives? Since the start of COVID-19, there's been a 35% increase in IT incident tickets per day. But it's expected that the CIO is taking a front row seat on defining the hybrid workforce strategy. The CIO, the CHRO, and the CEO and the MD. Therefore, CIOs, I'm not a CIO myself, but I understand IT, must consider the following questions when planning for the hybrid workforce. A, is IT in a position to support the technological growth and complexity required to power a hybrid workforce? How are technology stacks evolving to survive and thrive going forward? And what is your plan for automation? It's very important that the CIOs, the IT colleagues answer this in consultation or in liaison with the HR heads, the CHROs, the CLOs, and the company's apex leadership. With this, I want to ask you a question. Are you ready for the new normal? If for all of those of you who say yes, I will still want you to look at this slide. For all of those who say no, I will definitely want you to look at this slide. For all of those of you who are uncertain, well, the writing on the wall is that please look at this slide. So therefore, if you haven't looked at anything in the last couple of minutes, then look at this slide and I think I'll be able to make my point. If you're ready for the new normal, you will have to be ready for virtual work. Yeah, you will have to look at virtual work that balances worker location preferences with organization discretion. You'll have to look at leadership. You'll have to be transparent, vulnerable, and authentic leaders who demonstrate genuine concern for their workforce and are being rewarded with discretionary effort from their workers. You'll have to look at performance management. The pandemic has served as a catalyst to fundamentally rethink how and why they do performance management. Yeah, very important. It's a source is from Deloitte. It's the next normal silver lining from the pandemic. 3 more questions I want to ask you if you're ready for the new normal. Worker well-being. How will you look at worker well-being? The pandemic has reinforced the fundamental importance of worker well-being to organization and operations. Belongingness and excess. Underlying biases, assumptions, and other structural impediments still need to be addressed at work. The circumstances of remote working may contribute to the leveling the field of play. Very important. Recognition, appreciation, and purpose. Workers have come to find increased meaning and purpose in their work themselves, experiencing a more profound belonging in their organization. And these 6, if you have the answers, the way for you is the hybrid workforce. Thank you for your time and your patience, and now happy to take questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your valuable insights. We have a lot of questions for you.
So, when there are a lot of questions, there are only 2 things possible. Either it was very interesting, or people said, what the heck are you talking? Can you clarify what you're saying? Let me see.
No. People are really interested. That's the reason they are very curious and they're asking a lot of questions. First question I'll ask, so what challenges Tata Power faced initially to manage hybrid workforce from HR point of view?
Tata Power, was a very early adopter of, virtual learning solutions. Tata Power is a very, very learning-friendly organization. We were very lucky that all our colleagues, accepted the hybrid workforce model from the day it was announced. I must share the context for this, Abid and all colleagues here. We are a power company. We cannot afford to be fully remote working. Therefore, right in the time of the peak pandemic, my colleagues were working in the premises, in the plants, in the grids, in the transmission distribution centers to ensure that people like you and me have what is called essential service. Power is essential service. I have personally been visiting office right from February on 1 day a week, perhaps twice a week, to meet my people. Our MD has been on premises. So if I were to tell you what is the challenge was for us to identify out of essential, who's more essential. Yeah, it's a very tricky word. So what functions can we move fully remote? What functions do we have to keep on premise? If that's the situation, how do we ensure their safety? For us, our leadership, Tata Power, our stakeholders, our customers, our employees are extremely important. We must take all adequate care. We immediately moved to transportation for all our people. At the time when there was peak coronavirus, where even I was stopped sometime and said, show your iCard and you're in HR, why are you going to office? I had to explain why am I going to office by some government officials. From that time onwards, we ensure that all of us are getting absolute unstinted power supply. Therefore, for us, it was important to isolate the very essential and the one that could move to absolute remote working. We did that. A BCP, which was actually there, had to be modified to a Corona BCP. Okay, very, very difficult to have a Corona kind of BCP in the earlier times. The third was to ensure that how do I balance the performance, visibility of somebody who's risking it. I use the word risking it and he's on premise vis-a-vis person like me who's sitting in his house, air conditioning on and talking to you on this seminar, right? We also wanted to ensure that our people do not feel that they are doing something which is not to the larger cause. And everybody in Tata Power, I must say very proudly, and we all call them, Corona warriors, the power warriors. Everybody rose to the occasion, and that's what Tata Power is. 106 years of legacy. To be very frank, I don't think we faced any much challenge. I think we moved together. This could not have been possible without the support of our apex leadership and every employee, blue collar or white collar. That's my answer to this.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing what you went through and how you managed it. So the next question is Praveen Kala. What type of shared ownership really works in this hybrid model and why?
That's a very tough one. That's a very tough one. Shared ownership for me is ownership between the entire ecosystem of employees, which means there is individual ownership, which is me taking ownership for my work, me taking ownership for my team's work, me taking ownership for my colleagues, my peers' work, me taking ownership for the organization purpose. And I think it's a very larger premise here. I'll tell you why. See, we are all used to taking ownership for our work or our team's work, but how do we take ownership for our peers, our network of colleagues, and perhaps even somebody who's not related directly to our department? How can I, sitting here, take ownership for somebody who's servicing the customer right now by resolving a complaint somewhere in Delhi, Ajmer, Odisha, or let's say, Mumbai? How do I take care of that? And therefore, shared ownership is simple, one-liner, and that is aligning yourself to the larger objective and being accountable and responsible. Everybody must rise to the occasion and work as one. It is not me or you, it is me and you. And therefore, I always say, you complete us. If it's a you and it's a US, then you completes us. Otherwise, there's no us. So I think shared responsibility and accountability come together. By the way, I cannot be accountable if the other person is not responsible. It goes hand in hand, So shared accountability, responsibility is all about working together as a team. And you can do that, Abid, when you have alignment to the common purpose. Thank you.
Vishwarupa is asking, a certain percent of our employees still need to work from office premises to ensure the engineering systems are up and maintained well. Can you please share how their efforts are well recognized and rewarded?
Well, the reward cycle has to commence now in the month of April, March. Yeah. But I think, first of all, it's a very valid point. A lot of people have to work on premise. And in our case, they have been doing it. I think in other companies, they would have started now. And I think it is important for us to have a differentiated reward policy for this year for sure. And when I say differentiated reward policy, rewards for me is beyond monetary rewards. Rewards for we know the concept of total reward. We're all HR professionals. I think we must factor the difficulty level in the reward program. We must factor the aspect of perhaps giving up the comfort of taking a work from home and still going to premise. We must factor in this time, and I don't know whether we will do it or not. I'm giving you my perspective. This is purely the presenter's view. I'll put a caveat there, but it's like saying that I'm on the war front. I'm on the line of control. Okay, and you're back in the headquarters issuing email or a policy. Have you even kept in mind that in those times I was the one who was there? Because of me, everything else was going smooth. So I think all those people who are hearing me, if you can please, go back to your management, make a representation in any form of reward to recognize them. I think we did the best that we could do. We announced the Corona Warriors. The nation announced Corona Warriors. We have enough of, representation that the fact that each one of them, the front line, including the power sector, were Corona Warriors. But can we look at a differentiated reward policy? The answer is yes. Should we look at it? The answer is yes. Will we look at it? The answer is work in progress. But I think I have all intention that we should definitely look at it, not for the fact that we want to demean somebody who's not done it, but for the fact that we want to appreciate somebody who has done it. I think that's my answer to that. Yes.
Okay. I'll quickly move on to the next question. This question is from Anjali Chaudhary. She's asking, you spoke that Tata Power is a learning friendly organization. Question is, what are the measure of success that you drive for your learning and development function, and how?
Well, I think this is not related to the hybrid workforce. I think it's a generic question, but I will take it. I think during my 2.5 decades, I have the competence to answer this question. Anjali, it boils down to the fact that you have to be an enabler as a function. When you are an enabler, your work will speak for itself. You don't have to have any such data to prove. And I'm a Kirkpatrick certified professional, and I've been certified by Jim and Wendy Kirkpatrick. I must tell you that your value addition or your success factors are not in the eyes of what you see for yourself, but what the others see you. Which means this webinar will be successful only when Anjali writes to Abid on the chat box that Aditya and Abid have done a good job. I may say whatever, I may be well dressed, well spoken, if I may say so, but it's not effective unless you say so. Therefore, the business outcome is important. And in fact, Anjali, I can take it with you offline in a larger discussion. You can connect with me on LinkedIn and we can talk about it. There are a lot of things that we should be doing in learning and development to show effectiveness. Now, what does Tata Power do? Tata Power, we have a very robust integrated talent management framework where learning is at the center of it. Now, while every company will have the data parts, the mandates, the effectiveness, the aspect of coverage, spread, number of courses done, etc. But what we do three things. One, we go back to the stakeholders and say, this is what we have done. Please tell us, is it able to affect your business outcome or not? And our process starts with discussion with the stakeholders and it ends with the discussion with the stakeholders. So we do what is called ROE, not return on equity, return on expectations. If the expectation is met, Anjali and Abid, then I think it's absolutely successful. If the expectation is not met, you may give me a Mercedes-Benz S-Class. I never expected it. I will never give you a high ROE. But if you give me what I want, and I always say this in my session that I do, that it's like saying I have a Crocin. Pardon me if I'm taking a brand name, and you come and say, I'm unwell. I say, Crocin. Somebody else comes and says, I'm unwell. I say, take Crocin. I think if I don't diagnose right, and if I don't get to the point where I get to the core of your issue, whether it's developmental or whether it's performance related, then I will never have data to prove that I'm on the side of business support. But it's a longer discussion. We can have it offline, Anjali. There are very many means to show ROE, ROI, effectiveness, but you will never reach the destination if you took the wrong route, or you will never reach the destination if you didn't know where to go. If you don't know where to go, any road can take you there or any road can't take you there. So I think that's my broad answer, Anjali, but happy to pick it up with you offline. Abid, over to you.
Thank you so much. We'll take only a couple of more questions. That's it. So what are your top 3 priorities for capability development standpoint for Tata Power?
That's a very good question. I'm glad whoever has asked me that question, I think it's a very important question. Tata Power is moving from a traditional, I would say power generation, transmission, distribution company into new businesses now. As I speak, if you're all following Tata Power and look at the share prices and look at the various things that we are doing, we are in a totally new set of businesses. As I speak to you, we are in electric vehicle charging infrastructure. As I speak to you, we are in home automation. As I speak to you, you have seen our campaigns on solar rooftops. As I speak to you, we're getting into even newer ways of providing power to the rural consumers through microgrids. So suddenly, from if I may say so, from a B2G, business to government, or a business to business, we are now B2C. And what does a B2C company require? A B2C company requires 3 very important things: sales capabilities, customer service capabilities, and project management capabilities. Now, what we do in Tata Power, we have something called our core competencies, and we can call them as our emerging core competencies. So as I speak to you, we have 4 academies that are running very, 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 very fast and very, very focused. There's a sales academy, there's a customer excellence academy, there's a project management academy, and not to forget the data analytics academy. Today, nothing can go without data. So these 4 areas are extremely important for us in Tata Power. And I must compliment the MD and the leadership team that I work with, who are extremely learning friendly. By the way, we're also growing. We've just acquired Odisha Discoms. We have added another 15,000 of our colleagues into our Tata Power workforce. We have to integrate them to leverage their goodness. Tata Power is known for spreading invisible goodness. We take pride in lighting up lives. So we have another 15,000 people who have to be together taking pride in learning of life. And therefore, change management, progression of work is another important aspect. So I think to summarize, sales, customer, project management, data, digital, agility, speed of response, leadership development, we suddenly have a lot of leaders who we have to quickly groom for taking up large roles. When we acquire companies, as you know, that the power sector is undergoing a lot of changes. It's very progressive right now, courtesy of the government of India. I think we have to accelerate leadership development. So we have in place a 3-tier leadership framework. We work with IIM Ahmedabad for the apex level. We work with SPJN for the mid level. We work with TMTC for all the 3 levels, for the 2 levels, and for the the new program which is called Emerging Leaders. So we have Emerging Leaders program. We have mid-tier leadership program which is called Achieving Your Leadership Potential, and we have the Senior Leaders Development program at the apex level. So we have a lot of good work doing. Happy to pick it up with the person who asked questions to give you more information. Abid, over to you.
Okay, this will be my last question. And if you allow me, I have one question to ask. You spoke about hybrid workplace, hybrid work culture. Hybrid work is the new business normal, and it is here to stay. What we are hearing, what people are saying. Just one thing, how difficult will it be to build a strong culture with this hybrid workplace?
Abid, that's the editor's question. Lovely question. I think the only thing that I'm worried about, not about any company in particular, but everywhere, is the culture of a hybrid workforce. The hybrid workforce culture will be a unique culture. I think we may all be in for a surprise because we all may have certain shocks that we will see in sooner. All companies are in different stages of their own development. Some are very nascent startups, some are emerging companies, some are companies like us who are 107 years young, I would say. Some are companies which are promoter driven, some are MNCs, various businesses, various stages of business, various products, and various types of workforce. Also remember, we have the millennials and the Gen Zs, if I may call. There are various connotations to these words. I don't use these words, but I'm picking it up right now. I was interviewing some kids who were 1998 born. 1988, 98, I had finished my 5 years of work experience, and I was getting into an MBA program. I remember that. So these kids are different. How do we look at a workforce that is young? A young workforce in a changing environment is even difficult. A young workforce, changing environment, and the VUCA world that we all used to hear 2-3 years ago and even now is even difficult. A young workforce, changing environment, VUCA, and mixed with the old workforce is also difficult. And a young workforce, changing environment, opportunities in the country and abroad is even difficult. Therefore, every company has to create its own fabric and ensure that the fabric is woven on everybody that they hire. Therefore, I think now is the time to first define your culture. Maybe I'll say redefine your culture, know what you want to be standing for, and hire for culture. And if you already have a lot of workforce, ensure that you define. Once you define, you align. And once you define, align, then you also monitor the culture. I think that's important. No quick fix, no tablet to swallow that culture will happen. Culture will happen on a day-to-day basis. Culture will happen as we progress. But I think a lot of things will unfold, Abid, in the next couple of months. I think we could all slip back to the earlier pre-COVID time. I pray we should not, because I think that is not perhaps what we should do. We should look at the hybrid model. But I think if there's one thing that keeps me awake at night is how will all of us define our culture across the company, the country, the industries. We have to be very careful of that because everything is new. The workforce is new, the environment is new, and the situation is absolutely new. We've never seen this before. So I think it's a big one. I think it's good times ahead for OD professionals. All of you who are there, OD professionals, please remember that it's good times for us, LNOD. In fact, we were always important. We are more important now.
Thank you so much. I think we have crossed our time limit as well. I really agree with a lot of points that you have mentioned. And yes, redefine your culture if you want to create a strong culture in this hybrid workplace. On that note, I really want to thank you so much, Mr. Sareen, for joining us and sharing your thoughts. Also, I really want to share my gratitude to all the viewers for joining in and spending valuable time with us. Before we sign out, do subscribe to ETHR World and follow us on social media platforms to know everything about people and work. Thank you so much.
Till I see you next time in another webinar with ET World. Aditya Sareen signing off with all the best wishes for good times ahead. Thank you very much, everyone.